Well, I think what's happening today is that we're sort of in a conflict stage between the technologies we use to communicate and the real art of conversation. The other day, my sister told me this bizarre story about her daughter being on the phone with grandma. And and she hung up after the call, and she said to my sister, that was weird. And my sister said, what? And she said, well, Grandma talked, and I listened, and I responded, and then Grandma responded to me. And my sister said, honey, what you just had was a conversation. And my niece said, that's weird.
Yeah, we wrote the book because conversation is under attack. Anyone that has teenage kids knows, unfortunately, it's much easier to get them to respond to text than to a phone call. I asked my 19-year-old why he's so quick to respond to text and I can't get him to answer the phone. He said, because texting allows me to get to the bottom line faster. And that begged the question, what bottom line? And maybe more importantly, at what cost?
And whose bottom line? Right? So as we began to do research in this book, we began to realize that conversation is this sort of opportunity that often gets wasted or misused or abused, right? Yeah. And so here you have, like, look at the world of business. Here's what we find in business. People spend all this time and money manufacturing a product, marketing a product, training salespeople, providing service on the back end, back office support, and the whole thing lives or dies at the point of conversation.
Right. Happened to us recently. My wife and I left a business that we'd been referred to, and it was a beautiful office and a great setup, but we did not buy, and we walked away saying to ourselves, we can't get past that conversation.
Right. And so what we began to look at as we were researching was, what is it that actually makes a conversation stand out? What is a defining conversation? And we found that it's actually pretty simple, but a lot of people don't understand it.
No, there are two hallmarks to a great conversation: mutuality and significance. Mutuality says we agree, and significance says we not only agree, but we feel better about each other because of what transpired in this interaction. So our lives are filled with conversations. Unfortunately, they're defined by so few. And so our research has uncovered the hallmarks of what makes a defining conversation.
You know, it's kind of odd. I was talking to my attorney the other day, and he said when he knows that a situation requires a conversation, he absolutely refuses to email. Right? There's some things that are just too important to not do face-to-face. And so one of the really cool things we found in writing this book and doing our research was that there's a question you can prepare yourself to ask at the end of the conversation, and just knowing you're going to ask that question makes you so accountable and so aware that you absolutely show up in that conversation, and people walk away going, wow.
We uncovered this question, and it just was an aha for both of us. What a powerful way to ensure that you have more defining conversations.
Yeah, we're excited about this because, you know, even if the next conversation you and I walk into isn't a defining conversation, we now have this awareness that every conversation we enter into defines us to some degree.
And then, lastly, we introduce you to 8 people that you never want to invite to a conversation.
Yeah, and so it's kind of weird, right? We're studying conversation and what makes it happen, and we see all these characters showing up who are screwing it up for everybody, right? Like the talk show host who loves to hear himself talk, and he just keeps rambling on. And
you like to vacation in Florida, and I used to go to Florida until I discovered Hawaii.
Yeah, that's because you're a mountain climber, and you've always got a better story than I do. And you also jumped in.
Well, the one thing that I like to do most is I can usually know where you're headed, so I can finish your sentences for you, and that would make me...
Right, that would make you the psychic, and which, by the way, is only just one of your problems, because I'm also the ultimate fighter who will point out and edit you along the way during the conversation, tell you where you're wrong.
Right, so in a very short time frame, you get to understand who are the 8 characters that could potentially sabotage any really successful interaction.
And I think it's so exciting. I mean, isn't it all about human connection? That when you're done reading this book, we really feel like people are going to be able to walk away and say, you know what, the next time I'm in a conversation, they're going to remember me.
It is a little book about a big idea.